and welcome to the Kink Perspective. My name's Chris. I'm a psychotherapist and consultant. On today's show, I'm going to kind of dive into the world of unexpected relationship endings and the pursuit of closure that follows suit, especially when we get blindsided when someone ends a relationship and we're not really ready for it. Now, this is a topic that resonates deeply with a lot of people. I've been there, and I know quite a few people have been there. I was reading a few social media posts today, which is what kind of inspired this. And how do we, especially asking the question, how do we grapple with this unexpected dissolution of the connections we held so close to us? Well, today I want to kind of go through this journey of this emotional minefield of when things, end suddenly and we're kind of caught off guard. And how do we go through this post-breakup healing? And how do we navigate all of those twists and turns and try to find some empathy for ourselves or the situation? And most of all, how do we even make sense of it all? The worst part is when we're looking at all of these things, the aftermath of when something ends, it leaves us with this daunting feeling that we're going into the unknown without any guidance or support. So where things that were familiar and understood, especially when we're looking at the emotional realm of it all, suddenly shifts beneath our feet. Now, within this upheaval lies the opportunity for some growth, some healing, ultimately trying to find some closure. And the questions we get stuck along the way with. And there's one that's the most powerful question that when we often don't get closure and we have to learn how to grapple with and create our own closure in a situation. So as we kind of explore all of these dynamics here of it's going to kind of go through a little bit of an emotional minefield. So I want to maybe provide some insights and a little bit of support if you are recently have come out of this, if you're in the middle of this, even if you're thinking about doing this to someone where you're going to end something abruptly, not tell somebody why. Maybe if you're listening to this, you're going to understand how necessary it is actually to give, maybe to give somebody some sort of reason so they can understand. Now, I know one statement that I get a lot, and it's actually something that I support. Do I actually owe somebody a reason? No, what we are actually talking about is courtesy. If we don't want to date somebody, we're not obligated to date somebody. But we are talking about a nice reciprocity of telling people, we're no longer interested, and that's it. A lot of the times we get stuck in the question of the why. Why don't you? What about, why don't you like me? Why can't this be different? We just fall down that dark rabbit hole. Then that's when people tend to get angry and just kind of cut off communications. Now we're in a world where we can text breakup or send a emoji breakup, and then that's the end of the relationship. We've gotten away from the process of being really humanly connected and taking responsibility inside of our relationships. Because if we're going to take the responsibility of getting to know someone and date them and be intimate with them and share emotions with them, we should take the responsibility as well to end something with somebody once that happens. So how do we understand this unexpected relationship ending? Well, when we are looking to kind of go through all of these things to understand and pull apart the reasons why somebody's ending something with us, it can really lead us into a dark rabbit hole. We don't know why. We might start self-doubt, self-criticism. We might blame it on their behaviors. There's a multitude of reasons why relationships end. And relationships, for the most part, don't always end well. They don't end well because otherwise relationships tend not to end. Do some relationships end really well? Are some people friends with them? Yeah, I tend to think that there's some residual emotions there that aren't resolved. So maybe one party isn't really letting go. There is some founded evidence for that. But when we're looking at this, at its core here, an unexpected ending to a relationship disrupts the anticipated narrative of how we are living our lives at the time. And it blindsides people with this real abrupt cessation of the bond that we really held close to our hearts. Now, it's a rupture that fractures the very foundation of our trust and our stability moving forward. It creates massive quakes and ruptures inside of our emotional being and how we're going to end up navigating the day, the future days, the days coming towards us and the weeks coming ahead. And it does leave people grappling with a profound sense of disorientation and loss. Now, whether you're triggered by a breach of trust or unforeseen life circumstances, or even the gradual erosion of that mutual connection, these unexpected ruptures shake the very essence of who we are down to our emotional and mental state. And they challenge our perspectives here on our reality, and they make us reshape what we think we knew. Now, as we kind of go deeper into this, we're kind of looking at this multitude of reasons that underpin these unexpected breakups, and each layer reveals something different behind the unique blend of circumstances and emotions. Betrayal, with its corrosive tendrils here, shatters the fragile bonds of trust. We know that. It's not impossible to come back from betrayal, but it's definitely a really hard climb uphill. But that tends to leave people reeling from the sting of mistrust, and they have to grapple with profound feelings of hurt and disillusionment. There are sudden changes, whether in life circumstances or personal dynamics, that kind of unpen the delicate balance of the relationship. This then tends to thrust people into a whirlwind of uncertainty and upheaval. Their world is turned upside down. They don't understand why. They're missing out on their partner. Now, meanwhile, the slow erosion of mutual interest silently destroys the very being of what keeps a relationship going. And it leaves people adrift in kind of the sea of apathy and detachment. That tends to be the harder of the relationships to come back to. There tends to be a bigger reason, and that's a different episode for a different time. It's kind of what I cover in counseling. But we need to really understand that these are just some of the many reasons why relationships end, and they end abruptly. Now, amidst all of this chaos, there is an emotional aftermath that when breakups happen that are truly lays at the very depth of our vulnerability and our resilience. The emotional impact here reverberates through our psyche. It triggers this whole cascade of conflicting emotions, from denial to no, we're not done, to disbelief. Really? Why would you break up with me? Anger. I can't believe you broke up with me. To sorrow. And, crying. I can't cry on command, but I think you kind of get the point. And in this journey here, through this, while we're trying to understand our emotions that are now going at about 500 miles an hour, where each twist and turn unveils this new level of pain and introspection into our life and our journey with somebody. Now, through empathy and some understanding, we can slowly work our way through these turbulent waters, and we can figure out the insights and maybe even support. If we have a friend that's going through something like this, we can support someone that's grappling with the aftermath of an unexpected breakup. It's not easy, because we're left wondering what we did, why it's happened. Could we have changed something? And usually, more often than not, the answer doesn't really reside with the person that ended it, or it doesn't reside with the person who was broken up with. It resides with the person who ended the relationship. And there can be a multitude of reasons, whether they're founded or unfounded, and whether we agree or disagree. That's not really our point. If somebody decides to end a relationship, we have to respect it. So, what's this whole importance of closure? Now, central to the concept of closure is its profound impact on our emotional well-being and the journey towards healing and feeling whole again and ready to kind of start moving forward in life. Closure serves as this fundamental pillar upon which anyone can navigate grief and loss, and it provides this framework for acknowledging and processing and ultimately transcending the myriad of emotions that accompany the end of a relationship. By embracing closure, people can embark on a transformative journey here of self-discovery, acceptance. They can reclaim agency over their emotions, and this allows them to create a new path that will eventually be brighter for them and maybe even a more hopeful future. Because that's what we all want. I don't think there's not many people in this world that want to live alone. Pardon me. It's a cold day today, and I'm not a little under the weather. There are some people in this world that want to live alone. Most of us don't, and we are social creatures. So, if we're struggling with post-relationship blues, there is no real steadfast rule for how long you need to grieve. The loss of a partner, the longer you're with somebody, the more impact that that breakup or ending of that abrupt ending of that relationship, that it can even include death sometimes, is going to be on us. It's going to be more impactful. For some, they never get over it. For some, they get over it right away. For others, they live in the realm of denial, or they don't want to confront their feelings. All of these are perfectly normal responses. How long we stay in each area is dependent on the person. Now, amidst prevailing misconceptions about closure lies a real fundamental truth, and it's an inherently personal and introspective process, and it's often misconstrued as requiring direct communication with the ex-partner. But true closure here transcends external interactions. It's really rooted in self-reflection and acceptance and forgiveness. And this kind of brings up this memory for me where there was somebody a long time ago, God, I don't know, 20 years ago. It was a very unhealthy relationship. I didn't recognize it at the time. But this person was toxic for me. But no matter how many times that I tried to pull away, they could always pull me back. And I'm sure many of you are going to nod along, and we've all maybe had somebody like that once in our life. But finally, I had regained enough power and agency over myself. Regardless that I'm a dominant, didn't really matter because we're still human beings. So regardless of our roles, I regained enough agency and pride in myself to end the relationship finally on my own terms. And when I ended it, it hurt, and it hurt a lot. But I was finally at a point where I didn't want to have somebody dictating to me and weaponizing love, or telling me when they're going to talk to me and not talk to me, or never live up to their promises and always leading me on, creating false hope, and then ultimately breaking up with me on their terms and leave me wondering with the why. And the why, like I mentioned, it's a very dangerous area to be sitting in. Now, this is why I kind of talk about self-reflection here and learning how forgiveness is something we do in therapy. It's something I work on with my clients quite often. Some of my clients move through forgiveness quite quickly, and others, forgiveness is something that they don't want to approach for a very long time because it's a hard concept to follow and understand. Now, communication really does facilitate closure in certain contexts, so we can get some understanding of why something ended. But the essence here lies in this internal journey towards reconciliation and inner peace with ourselves. It's not going to matter what somebody else has done, because ultimately, if they've ended it and hurt us, we don't want to. We're trying to find the answer why, and maybe a way back. But ultimately, the fracture is there. The relationship more than likely is irreparable. But beyond its immediate implications here for this emotional healing we need, closure yields far-reaching benefits for personal growth and our own emotional transformation here. And it lets us break free from the confines of our past, and it allows us to embrace new beginnings and opportunities for growth. Especially, it gives us something that's really powerful. And this is a renewed vigor and resilience to eventually start to open up our hearts again and potentially trust somebody new. But by embracing closure, you can really gain invaluable insights into who you are, to what your relationship was, maybe the good and the bad things, and even out of the bad things, what can you learn? And where was your responsibility? Where does that lie? How can we grow? I know this sounds like a lot of these weird, maybe even new age things, but these are some of the things we even cover in therapy. Because the reality is if we're not understanding what we're doing inside of a relationship, if we don't know how we're navigating even our own behaviors, we may inadvertently contribute to why something ended. So we have to look at all of these things. it really becomes this process where we gain a greater sense of self-awareness and authenticity, and maybe even learn how to become more deeply empathetic. And through empathy and understanding, we can get to that point of self-reflection where we can start to understand maybe we're at a better point with, or maybe we weren't mature enough for the relationship. No matter what the reason is, though, the thousands of them that will be there, it's easier once we start looking on ourselves, especially when something ends and we're not getting a lot of reasons as to why it's ending. So, how can I even maybe create a strategy to find closure? Um, well, first, I've kind of started touching base on that. We have to do some reflective practices here, and that's encouraging. You really have to listen. You have to go inside and start to unpack everything that's happened and see where everything sat inside of this breakup. Why you didn't like a certain part of it. It's just because you didn't agree. It's not how you wanted to end the relationship on your own terms. But through the art of introspection here, you gain the ability to navigate your innermost thoughts and especially your emotions. And you gain this clarity and insight into the world of closure. You can do some journaling, reflect on how you feel today from how you would feel by next week. Therapy is another way to get into some great essences of reflective practices. Support groups of trusted friends, confidants, or actual support groups, or things just like your own self-reflection, taking little notes, and then sort of like journaling, but not. You're kind of more, maybe even just taking your mental notes. All of these, though, lead towards a path of healing and self-understanding. The next one can be a little bit more daunting for people. That's acceptance and forgiveness. Acknowledging this whole profound significance of acceptance and forgiveness in this process of closure, it really does lead us towards emotional liberation and reconciliation. Now, if we are able to embrace the reality of the situation and extend compassion to ourselves, even to maybe our partner who's broken it off, we can transcend the shackles of resentment and bitterness, which tend to set in. And don't don't mark my words here and say that every relationship ends bitterly, because it don't. Most times, in my experience, the people I've worked with, relationships that have ended, they've ended badly. So they've ended for a reason. But they don't always, so we're not going to say every one. But this allows us to start to be compassionate towards that end. It gives us the ability to start finding some inner peace and calm, and allows ourselves to become a touch more liberated emotionally. If we understand this process, this whole act of self-compassion, it not only allows you to honor yourself, but to foster a sense of empathy and understanding towards your ex-partner. And it gives you the ability to forge a path ahead to start healing and reconciling. And it's not easy to do, to accept and forgive. I don't want to accept that we were just at a restaurant, you turned to me and broke up with me, got up and walked out the door, and I feel sitting there like an idiot, or that everybody in the room is looking at me, when in reality probably no one really is, unless we've made a scene. But we feel embarrassed, we're going to feel ashamed, we're going to feel shocked and upset and sad, and then anger will come. All of these different emotions. But maybe we didn't like how the breakup happened, but we can accept that it happened. And maybe we don't want to, or we don't like the way they even told us how they wanted to end it. But we can forgive ourselves for the way we reacted. Before we're ready to forgive somebody else, we have to learn how to forgive ourselves. This next one's kind of a little bit deeper. It's about creating meaning. And what do I mean by creating meaning? This is really to embrace the wisdom here you've gleaned from your experiences inside of the relationship, to rewrite this whole narrative of your with resilience and purpose. And by reframing the hardships as opportunities for growth and transformation, you get the ability to transform how closure comes to you. I know this all sounds like I'm kind of repeating the same things, but the reality is that these are all the necessary steps we have to do when we are looking for closure. Otherwise, we don't get it. There are reasons why, like in certain things, if there's a tragedy, let's say, I'm not going to go into too deep of this example, but if there is a crime involved and we don't know what happened and somebody's missing, we're not going to get closure because we don't know. We might accept the premise that 10 years gone by, we haven't never seen them again, haven't found any bodies. That's completely different when we're comparing that to the end of a relationship. So we have to understand all of these different things. When we are looking at meaning inside, I started talking about meaning here, we have to understand that we can create a newfound possibility and kind of embrace the beauty of our own evolution from all the growth we got from that relationship. Whether we're upset or maybe even possibly, subconsciously relieved it ended and somebody else had the strength to do it. We get a chance to take all of these things, and it's a huge growth process. Another part of this is we need to look at how do we deal with our unresolved feelings. These and the unresolved feelings in the aftermath of something unexpectedly, like a relationship being terminated over text, really, they fester, they sit, they don't go away. We don't know what to do with them. Typically, they'll come in these very tumultuous waves of anger, possibly grief, longing. We don't know how to get back to our path of grace. Definitely don't know how to get back to our path of being resilient. When these things happen, when we are trying to understand that we can't always get the closure we're looking for, we have to acknowledge that there's a lot of complexity here. Now, in a DS dynamic, if we're looking at, and I'm trying to keep this quite broad, but I'm going to bring this back a little bit to the lifestyle. We have DS dynamics that are set maybe in contracts, right? There might be a length of time you're together with somebody. We're going to say, okay, we're going to do a dynamic for 9 months. We'll reevaluate whether or not, we'll discuss whether we're going to reevaluate or not. Well, maybe the submissive just calls it quits, or the dominant says, you know what? 9 months is up. I'm done. Thank you. Bye. It's a shock. There's no reason why. They're not telling somebody what's wrong. They walked away. Or the submissive just, stops answering calls, doesn't want to talk. No excuses given. I'm not going to go into the whole somebody was abusive or we're not going to go into the outliers of things that were generally specific reasons that we can't understand why somebody might have gone and, have left. But we need to understand here that the journey towards healing it's non-linear. And it's got a lot of peaks and valleys, which our emotions are going to kind of ebb and flow over time. Now, we have to understand there is a huge complexity in the healing process. But if you grant yourself a little bit of patience and compassion to navigate these ups and downs, you are going to find more self-awareness and resilience. I know it takes time. I know it sounds like I'm being repetitive. And I know it sounds like it's a bunch of new age stuff, but it's not. These are the same things that we talk about in therapy all the time. These are the same type. It's similar advice. It's not the exact advice, but it's similar advice that we will give to people. Because there is a sense of loss here. When I talk to people about relationships, I will even talk to them about the stages of grief. And they will look at me because they're like, oh, well, the stages of grief, those are more for when someone has died, we've got to mourn a loss. In essence, you're mourning the loss of the relationship. Regardless if you know why it ended, you have to mourn the loss for it. You have to come to terms with it. So how do we manage maybe these linear feelings? Well, managing linear feelings, there's some practical ways you can do this through emotional regulation and self-care. even through some mindfulness practices, you can cultivate this sense of presence and awareness. You can understand. I like to use this thing called the automatic thoughts pyramid. So at the very top of the pyramid, if you can imagine, you have a situation, the breakup. That, if you draw an arrow down to the next point, is literally what should be where our thoughts. And from our thoughts, the next arrow goes over, and we're looking at our emotional process. Now, what tends to happen is we have the situation, we literally bystep. I mean, like light speed in Star Wars, we shoot right into emotions and get angry or sad or depressed, whatever emotion is going to come over us, and we live there. We're not spending any time thinking or reflecting on what's going on. We start passing judgment. We don't respond with any compassion or self-kindness at all. We start lashing out. But this becomes a moment where we can sit back and say, listen, it's okay. I know I'm going to be upset. I'm sad. My partner just ended this with me. I don't know if it's with me, and I'll do that introspection later. But maybe I need to just sit with the fact for a moment that it ended and think a little bit logically about it. Fair enough. From there, we can kind of work through some exercises that allow us to be a little bit more compassionate towards ourselves, to extend some observations of our own emotions and understand why we're getting upset. These are all things that we can do when relationships end abruptly. I can't necessarily pin down like every reason why somebody ends something terribly quick, and there are probably millions of reasons why. There's going to be millions of reasons more that we don't even know. But ultimately, we have to kind of remember, once something ends, our first responsibility then, because we've now, in essence, we're being told that our relationship, which is the unity of at least two people, that is over. So our primary responsibility, which used to be that first, ourselves, ourselves as well, but our relationship first, kind of ourselves second, but making sure we're definitely looking after ourselves. We have to return to caring about ourselves fully and looking after ourselves. How we're going to deal with the emotions, how we're going to deal with the backlash, our anger, our sadness, our loneliness, how we're going to handle all of these things. It's not easy, and I get all of that. But this whole quest for closure becomes a big guiding light amid a storm of emotions. It's a journey that really should be marked by introspection and compassion and courage to confront your own vulnerabilities head on, even if you're not comfortable doing it. And you have to do these things through these reflective practices. You have to understand and eventually over time come to accept the situation and learn to, at the very least, forgive yourself for being a part of it. So you don't beat yourself up constantly, like I see many people do. This allows you to regain this control of your own well-being. You're going to have to also, I want you to keep one thing in mind. Closure isn't merely a destination, it's a journey on a path of self-discovery and growth. It is a testament to our resilience as we kind of go through these peaks and valleys of our emotions. And it allows us to emerge stronger, wiser, and hopefully a more compassionate person in the future. That we can help others when they're struggling with that same that same question of why did my partner leave? Why did they end it? So I want to leave you all with a question today about this. How can we turn the pain of unexpected endings into opportunities for self-discovery and empowerment? How can you do it? How did you do it if you've ever experienced this? This question is going to be up on Spotify. I'll put it on my social media so you can kind of respond. I really want to hear from you all. I want to hear from you all over the world. My listeners in Italy and in Spain, my listeners in Canada and Australia and Singapore and the Middle East. I want to hear from you. I want to know how your culture, maybe how your religion, how your personal beliefs, your creeds, your races, how does a breakup like this, when it's sudden and abrupt, how do you respond? I really want to know. Now, in the words of the great philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, he once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Maybe through this and understanding of this, we can find solace in the pursuit of our closure. And knowing that if we maintain our resilience, we don't lose sight of our empathy, and we discover who we are again emotionally, we're able to more aptly deal with an unexpected relationship breakup with a little bit more grace and a little bit more dignity. But here's hoping that you don't suffer that many in your future, that you're making the right choices or choosing the right people that are going to benefit you in your life. I definitely think there's a companion episode in what I'm talking about here today, because it's more so about boundaries and kind of leads me to the next point. But yeah, so let me know what you think about this in the comments today. Really come back to this question. I'm going to ask it again just in case. How can we turn the pain of an unexpected ending into opportunities for self-discovery and empowerment? How do you do it? How does it happen to your friends? How does your culture impact all of those things? Now, for a quick update on my book, my hard copy book is now, the release date is, it's like a week or two. It should be available. My book will be in print version. It'll be, I think it's going to be $12.99 US. So for those who've been asking me, I'm so sorry it's taken this long. Publishers have been really good, hopefully helpful. They've got it done. But I've been slack and I've been really busy, so I do apologize for that. If this is the first time you're listening to me today, please like, subscribe, rate the show 5 stars on Spotify. I can keep the show free for now. And this allows also the show to reach others, to, maybe answer some of the questions that they're looking for in certain situations as we go through the lifestyle or navigating relationships or even our own emotional journey. So with that said, everybody, until next time, be safe and stay kinky.